Hello, everyone. Welcome back to my channel. It is your girl, Christina, and I have with me today another special guest. This here is Amelia, la Domiriqueña. Some of you guys may know who she is. She's been on Instagram for a while, and she's a budding TV media personality. And as you can tell by her name, she is half Dominican and half Puerto Rican. And she did also recently start a channel which is called Domiriqueña Presenta. So Amelia, thanks for coming on to my channel and for doing this interview with me.
No, thank you. I'm so excited. As I've told you in conversations in the past, I actually have been a fan of your channel for some time now. I've been following it for a while now, and I've been seeing it grow. And I'm so happy for you that it has taken off the way it has. I definitely have been, following it for some time now. So yeah. So,
yeah.
So excited.
Thank you. So I definitely wanted to get into some of the different things you're working on as far as social media is concerned. So, you have your Instagram, you're also on TikTok, which I'll put the username on TikTok. Your videos are hilarious. And then, like I said, you have your channel, and then you work for this company, Tempo Networks. So I guess we could start with that. So I follow that page as well. And so it seems like Tempo Networks is basically just all things Caribbean music, Caribbean media. Do you guys go into Caribbean history a little bit too? Maybe, I don't know.
I mean, we have basically across the spectrum, just anything regarding the Caribbean. One of our slogans is, the gateway to all things Caribbean. So definitely just anything from history to food to travel to we kind of cover a little bit of all of it. So actually, I've been at Tempo for some time now. I think a little over a year as an employee, but I actually started out as an intern when I was in college for the company before I started working there. Yeah, I started out as a music intern when I was in college getting my music degree. So so that's how I started out there. And I actually started out as a music intern and then somehow kind of shifted into media. And now I'm a producer and a host for a show that I actually created myself as an intern. It's a show called The Ritmo de la Isla.
Yes.
So that show is basically, it's kind of like a music countdown, but also with that, we also, well, not right now because of COVID, unfortunately, my content is it's kind of changed a little in the format because a lot of what we would do is go to different, parades, festivals, things like that. I had a lot of things planned. I actually had a lot of things planned in DR, and I can't really go there right now because of everything that's going on. So the format of everything's kind of changed. But before the whole pandemic and everything, we would go to a lot of parades, concerts. We would have artists come into the studio. We would interview them in the studio as well. I've interviewed quite a few, mostly bachata artists, just because that's just how it ended up being. But we do have, once things, start to calm down with the pandemic, we're going to be interviewing a lot of different artists from the Caribbean. Our show specifically, the show that I created, that I produced, it's mostly just, like Latino Caribbean music. So mostly, reggaeton, bachata, merengue artists, things like that. I actually have also an interview with a punta artist coming up soon. So very excited about that.
Yeah, so, I noticed you've been showing a little more punta lately. I did notice that.
Yeah, definitely. Just because, there's definitely people have their different opinions as to, what countries are really considered part of the Caribbean. Nobody really argues that Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico, and Cuba are not part of the Caribbean. But, there are some other countries that people, they tend to, disagree. Whether Panama's part of the Caribbean or Honduras or, Belize and, different countries. So definitely, I try to represent as many countries that have Caribbean influence and that people consider to be Caribbean. So now, I have this artist who is Belizean and Honduran that I'm going to be interviewing just because we always have represented Belize and Honduras in our company. So, I felt the need to also show that genre as well, just because I feel like it's definitely getting a lot more hype now. Like people are... I realized a lot of like sounds on TikTok trending with people dancing punta. So definitely it's something that people are starting to popularize definitely a lot more. So
oh, that's awesome.
So that's basically what we do at Tempo, just anything Caribbean, just basically trying to uplift the culture.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. That's really cool. So, to everyone listening, if you want to follow their page, I'll leave the link to their page. If you want to get more into, Caribbean music, and, culture and stuff like that, definitely check that out. All right. So, and then moving on to your channel. So you recently just created a channel like a little over a month ago. So it's still fairly new. So you did a bachata countdown. I remember. What else do you have on your channel right now? I can't remember on the top of my head.
So I did a few videos just reacting to songs. I did a video reacting to such a song, Relación, the remix of it. So I'm doing mostly, reacting to different songs, different music videos and things like that. I am going to do some other videos, talking about trending topics also. The channel, the content for the channel is, moving a little bit slowly at the moment just because, my full-time at Tempo is, kind of taking a lot of my time right now. So I'm actually, everything that I do with my channel, though, it's all kind of connected to the network. So like if you look on my channel, like every time at the end of every video, I always, refer people, to check out Tempo, check out my show, things like that. So I'm always trying to connect, both of those things together. So right now, I'm actually going to be uploading 2 interviews that I did recently for the network on Instagram Live. I'm actually going to be uploading those interviews on my YouTube as well, which one of them was, it was with Claribel Ruiz, who is the founder of the Dominicans of Haitians movement. So I did an interview with her talking about anti-Blackness in the Dominican community. So I'm going to be uploading that to my channel, as well as an interview I did recently with the CEO of Shop Be Latina. Her name is Tamara Garcia. Yeah, so I did an interview with her also. So I'm going to be uploading those on the channel as well, just to kind of, keep that, connection between my channel and also the network. So yeah.
Okay, cool. So again, to everyone listening, if you want to check out her channel, I'll definitely leave the link to her channel in the pinned comment and like I usually do in the description box. So I now want to get a little more into your background. So your mom is a Dominican one, right? And your dad is Puerto Rican.
Yes.
Okay. And I'm assuming you've been to both countries, right?
Yeah. So my situation was a little different because I know people, it's funny because people actually have like these kind of like stigmas with, when who's more Dominican, whether like you go back there certain amount of times or whatever. So definitely that was something that for me, people always were like, oh, you're not Dominican enough because you don't go there often enough. Because, I actually went back recently for the first time in 15 years.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, I hadn't been back in 15 years. And the reasons for that were just, the last time I went there, my parents just had me and my sister. So it's kind of easier to travel, financially, like just everything wise, it was easier to travel. My sister was a baby. I was a little kid. It was just the 2 of us. And, after that, my mom had 3 more kids. So, things got a little difficult, mom and dad are, they're working, they're hustling, getting time off, getting the money to take 7 people to DR is not easy. And we actually had never gone to Puerto Rico until, what was it, 2015, I think it was? The first time I went to Puerto Rico in my life. Because when I was little, because of, there's so many of us, so many kids, sometimes my dad would just go, to visit his father by himself. So, to get all of us there, was difficult. So he actually, we actually made the time to go there just because, my father was like, okay, financially it's difficult for 7 people to go on a trip. But he was like, okay, we have to do this because my grandpa's getting old. So, he was like, he has to meet his grandkids. So, so we went to Puerto Rico a few years ago. But even now, when I went back to DR, it was just me and my sister, who were both adults now. So, so now it's a little easier because it's like now we're both adults, we have our own job. So we can kind of just pick up and, buy a flight and go. Although it's a little sad because my mom still hasn't been back. And now it's been like 16, maybe 17 years. And it's really sad that, but it's really sad that, she really, really longs to go back. And it's really sad that like for example, when I went with her, we were trying to get her passport, which for any Dominicans out there who have gone to the consulado in Manhattan, you know how that goes. So basically, moral of the story, my mom still doesn't have a passport. And that was before the pandemic because it's a mess over there. And they're like, oh, your birth certificate this, and we have to talk to the Capitol, and it's a mess. Man. So when we went to go get her passport, people are there, they start talking to each other, and they're like, oh, oh, ¿cuándo fue la última vez que volviste? Like, oh, when was the last time you went back? And she was like, oh, I haven't been in like over 15 years. And they were like, oh, so you're not even Dominican then? And I was like, oh, wow.
Oh.
I was like, so rude. Wow, that's insane.
Damn.
But yeah, so I definitely haven't spent as much time, like physically on the islands. Growing up, I haven't been able to travel there as much as I've wanted to. But definitely now, because of work, I actually had plans to actually take like 2 trips to Puerto Rico and like 3 trips to DR in these past months. But COVID, for work purposes, there were a lot of events happening, this summer on both islands that I actually wanted to go to. I actually had some things set up already that I was supposed to do, and everything got canceled. So it was really sad. Especially being that like now my work is something that allows me to, be able to go there for work and also, be able to, see my family in the process and also, be, in the motherland, motherland, it's so great. And then the fact that, this has kind of ruined everything is really sad. But 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 the thing is, even though I haven't really, I haven't grown up going there physically, I did grow up in a very, very predominantly Latino community. Shout out to Union City, New Jersey, where if people don't know where that is, it's literally like the city that's right across from New York City. Like literally, you get off of the Lincoln Tunnel. If you come from New York from the Lincoln Tunnel, it's the first exit. It's right there. We're literally right across from the city. Yeah. So being that we're right across from the city, we have very much that type of demographic where it's actually a very, very predominantly Latino city. I believe we're like 80% Latinos in Union City. Like it's a super Latino heavy community. Like basically like it's like you see people on the street and like they're almost never gonna speak to you in English. Like it's a very, very like Latino heavy atmosphere. And yeah, so this is where I've grown up. So it's not really, in a way, it's not really like I've had the typical American experience, because my experience growing up has been very, very Latino heavy. All my friends growing up have all been Dominican mostly, not really Puerto Rican. I'm actually like out of my friend group from like my childhood friend group from when I grew up, I'm actually the only one who's Puerto Rican. Most of my friends are like Dominican or Dominican mixed with something else. Yeah. So. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So that's been my experience growing up. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. So being able to grow up in a Latino bubble, and I think a lot of people that live up north kind of have that experience. I'm in Virginia, so but up north, it's like even if you don't necessarily travel back to your parents' countries because you live in this like Latino bubble or this Dominican bubble, Puerto Rican bubble, you're still able to maintain the culture in a way.
Yeah.
So, okay. So since you've now traveled to both islands, so let me first start off with the experience of Puerto Rico. How was that for you? How was Puerto Rico compared to the U.S.? Like, what stood out to you? What did you like about being there?
I feel like the one thing is, and some people might get mad if I say this, but no, but it's kind of true. Like, in a way, it's kind of like the vibes are kind of similar in both islands in a way. When it comes to just kind of the whole vibe of the Caribbean versus the U.S. is very different. Like the first thing I realized on both islands is that everyone is so calm compared to here. Like here it's like everyone's, especially because I live in like New Jersey, like especially like, around here, like I said, we're right across from the city. So it's kind of like we have the same type of mentality that we're always on the go. It's like
very fast-paced life.
It's a very anxious pace, thing where everything is just moving all the time,
Yeah.
Nothing is still. And especially like when I went to Puerto Rico, the thing I realized was like my uncles and my aunts, like everybody, like they would finish work early. They would come home. They would like lay on the hamaca outside. And I'm like, wow, look at us. We're so calm. Like this is lovely. Like it's definitely, definitely the whole vibe of people is just so much more calm than here. So definitely that was the first difference that I realized right away. And then the other thing is, people always laugh, but I'm like, look, I'm a foodie. And literally the first thing I noticed was I came back here and I was like, everything tastes like trash now. Like everything tastes terrible. It's just everything tastes better there. Like either island, like I said, it's like the vibes are very similar. Like either island, like anything I'm eating there tastes better there than it does here. Like It's
So
just definitely different.
Yeah. Puerto Rican cuisine is very similar to Dominican food, though, isn't it?
Yeah. And it's
very
funny
similar.
because working for Tempo, I realized, and this is why, in a way, I always tell people, like, I actually, like, I feel like most, Dominicans, Puerto Ricans, and I will say most, not all, because I have seen some that are not that way, but a lot of people, like, they'll first kind of, like, identify themselves as Latino or Latina or Latinx, whatever, right? So, and they won't really, like, necessarily say that they're Caribbean all the time. They're kind of just say, like, oh, like, they're Latina or Latino. And I feel like definitely, especially working with people from other places in the Caribbean with my job, I've definitely kind of even, like, just realized, like, identifying, like, in a way, like, I identify as Caribbean in a way first, then Latina. Like, I'll say I'm Caribbean and then I'll say I'm Latina, because I feel like the experience of being Caribbean is a little different than the experience of just being Latina. Yes. Because there's a very big difference, and it's not and it's not even like, because I know some people recently, there have been some things on social media, oh, Caribbeans think they're better than the rest of Latin America. No, it's not even that. It's just we're different. Like, I love everybody from Latin America, but a Dominican is real different from a Mexican.
Yes.
Cuban is really different from a Peruvian. Like, it's just very different.
Yeah.
So I feel like it's funny that I realized, like, with working with this company, that the Caribbean is so similar. And especially even when it comes to, like, cuisine, like, I watch a lot of the programs that our show produces, and I see, like, people eating and, like, things, or, like, cooking shows, and I'm like, that's the same thing that we eat. We just call it something different. Like, they're all eating plantains and rice and beans and meat. Everybody's eating the same thing. Everybody's just calling it different. We all have the same fruits. We just call them something different. Like, I know we've done a lot of things on our social media talking about, what is this fruit called? And then in DR we say limoncillo, and in Puerto Rico they say and somewhere else they say ganap, and it's crazy, but it's like we literally all eat the same thing basically. So some things are a little bit different. Some people have their specific dishes, but the basis of it is all the same.
Yeah. And that's really interesting that you bring that up. And I remember a long time ago, I had wanted to make a video about this, but I just never got along to doing it, because I've seen conversations online before, because like you said, Dominicans, Puerto Ricans, Cubans tend to identify more with the rest of Latin America versus being Caribbean. Like, we don't always group ourselves with the rest of the Caribbean, the non-Spanish speaking Caribbean islands. And so I've seen posts that are like, so are the Spanish Caribbean, can they even be considered West Indian? Like, they fall into that category too. And so you see kind of like that back and forth. So it's like, well, geographically they are, but kind of not, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. But at the end of the day, it's like, we are still Caribbean, and whether we realize it or not, we do actually share a lot of similarities with the rest of the Anglophone and Francophone Caribbean, Yep. So yeah, that's definitely very interesting that you bring that up.
Yeah, literally the only thing that really divides us is, like, language, our language, and maybe, like I said, certain different dishes that we eat, certain things in our history, but in reality, we're all much more similar than different. So,
yeah, definitely. Okay. So being in DR, what stood out to you there versus Puerto Rico?
In DR, well, the one thing that I always talk to my mom about, and it's funny, but we always said that when we went to Puerto Rico, the big difference that we saw from DR is, and I know some people will argue this, and they say, maybe it's the areas that I went to, maybe it's my family. So a little just like racial background of my family, my Puerto Rican side is all white. They're literally like basically all white passing white Puerto Ricans. So, and when we went to Puerto Rico, we saw a lot of white people. And like, that was the big thing that, like, me and my mom always talk about. We we went there. We were like, where are the black people?
Oh, wow.
And so a lot of people did tell me that it might have been the area that I went to. And I know that because I didn't see everything in Puerto Rico. My family lives like on the western side of the island, and we mostly traveled there. So we went to a few different cities like on the west side of the island. So I know that maybe if we would have gone, other places, maybe we would have seen, more black people or more mixed looking people, but we definitely did see just a lot of like really light, really white Puerto Ricans. So that was like the biggest, like the biggest racial difference. But then, like I said, like everything was like even just like the beaches, like my mom always says, she goes, no, our beaches are better. But, but honestly, I can honestly say that like that for me, like trying to look at it in a non-biased sense, like I'm both, and like in reality, it's very, very similar. You know, the beaches, the food, like the vibes, like everything's very, very, very similar. You know, so so basically, what I can tell you about one, I can kind of tell you the same thing about the others.
Yeah. Okay. So basically, the biggest difference you would say is like the color difference.
Right, color difference,
a bit whiter.
Yeah, and like I said, maybe like certain certain traditional foods, like the way, like certain things, like the way they say things, what they call things, like I went to Puerto Rico and they were here talking about, oh, let's go have a limber, a mantecado, and I'm here like, what? Because my mother's Dominican, so I don't really speak like a Puerto Rican until I go to DR. That's the ironic part. When I go to DR, they're like, oh, you're Puerto Rican, and I'm like, what? I've never been told that before. They're like, yeah, you have like a little Puerto Rican accent, and I'm like, okay. But when I'm in Puerto Rico, they make fun of me because they're like, you talk, or not make fun of me, but like just joking around. Like they joke around with me a lot. They're like, you speak so Dominican.
I was gonna say, the times that I've heard you speak Spanish, I feel like you sound more Dominican to me.
No, definitely, absolutely. And I don't deny it. I'm like, I know what Puerto Ricans say. Like I know the slang, I know the things, but I don't really use them myself. Like I know that Puerto Ricans, we say pegado and we say con, but I say con. I don't say pegado. As me pegado, I'm not confused, but I don't use it myself, to be honest.
Yeah.
And my Puerto Rican family, at this point, I could say pegado, I could say suéltame en banda, I could say, oh, tú tienes cuarto, and no one's confused because they know. She just speaks Dominican, she does. But that was the little things. Like in Puerto Rico, it was like, like they'd be like, oh, I'm gonna comer un mantecado, and I'm like, what's that? What's that? Helado, Amelia, helado. Oh, okay, sorry. Like because
they call ice cream like helado mantecado.
Yeah, in Puerto Rico they say mantecado, or like what we call like a frío in DR. In Puerto Rico, it's like a limber, and I'm like, what is that? Oh, it's como un frío, like an icy. Oh, okay, but I didn't know what that was because, like I said, I definitely grew up with more of the Dominican slang. Definitely because my mom is Dominican, and like I said, most of my friends are either like half or whole Dominican. So for me, the Puerto Rican slang doesn't come as easily. Definitely.
Yeah. Gotcha. That's so funny. Okay, cool. But yeah, you definitely sound more Dominican to me. Moving on. So you already said that you identify as Caribbean, and on your Instagram, I know that it says that you identify, you have Afro Caribeña on there.
Yes.
And I know you speak a lot about like Afro Latinidad and just kind of like some of the racial issues within the Latin community, which I know some of my audience loves to hear about.
Right. I've been here long enough to know. Right. I've been here long enough to know this is their favorite topic.
Yes. Oh, you're just promoting division. But anyway, I know you said before, especially when addressing this issue among like the Dominican community, that you've had people say that you are anti-Dominican, and I'm sure they said, oh, you're a pro-Haitian and all that stuff. The usual. So, so what made you want to start talking about that? Because I remember in the interview, that live video or that live thing on Instagram that I was listening to, you were on. I do remember you mentioned that you personally didn't really grow up hearing a lot of this anti-Black stuff from your mom, but you've heard stories of other people that have. So what kind of made you want to start talking about that?
Yeah, so just to tell you a little bit, like my background growing up, like my mom, so like I said guys before, I do identify as Afro Caribeña, Afro Latina, but I am biracial, right? So my mom is a Black Dominican woman, and my dad is a white Puerto Rican man. So and his whole family is very, very white passing. I'm pretty sure I said this in the live too, that like when my friends started coming to my family parties, they're like, "Who are all the white people?" And I'm like, "Those are my cousins."
The white people.
They're like, "Oh wow!"
God.
Like. Because literally, like, my Puerto Rican family could stand next to Billy, Bob, and Kathy, and, like, they could think that they're family instead of me.
Really?
So, yeah, it's serious. So, but for me growing up, my mom, being a Black Dominican, my mom always says, like, she's like, I always knew I was Black. Like, my mom has never had an issue with anti-Blackness. She's never passed any anti-Blackness like ideals onto me or my siblings, you know?
Yeah, same with me.
She's never told me these things like mejora la raza. She's never told me to marry a white man. Like these things have never happened. Like she never told me to mess up my hair. I did that on my own, you know? So like all of these types of things that, you know, it's known for Dominicans to do. My mom didn't do any of those things. She never promoted any anti-Haitian ideas on me either. I said this in the other live too, but I actually have an aunt who's half Haitian. So yeah, so it's, and my mom always talks about her Haitian friends she had in DR. So for me, it was even like a shock when I started to see other Dominicans say things like, "Es un Haitiano." I'm like, what? What is that? Like, why are you calling him a Haitian? He's just a black guy. Like, that doesn't mean, that's a black man. That doesn't mean he's Haitian because he's dark. Like, I just didn't understand these things, you know, because I never experienced it. And like, when I saw things like, oh, a friend of mine was dating a Haitian and her family was upset about it. And I was like, why? He seems like cool people. Like, what's the problem? And hearing all these things they would say about him, oh, este haitiano, no lo traigas a mi casa, yo no quiero hablar con él. And I'm like, okay, like, you know, because like I said, it's just, these aren't things that I was taught from my mom or from any of my family. These just aren't things that I was taught. So, so yeah, so for me, it's just, you know, the idea for me of anti-Blackness is just, it just doesn't make sense to me because I feel like a lot of what you think is just like what is passed down to you. You know, the way that we're raised is so, you know, it's so detrimental to how we look at the world, how we look at society. So, you know, if you're growing up hearing these things, then that's what you're gonna think, you know. So that's why I feel like for me, like the idea of anti-Blackness for me is so like simple, just because for me it's just not. It just hasn't been what I've learned. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that was the same experience for me. My parents or my mom, because I feel like both. I was going to say a lot of times a mom really bears a lot of weight on that, but really it's both. I mean, my mom, she's the lightest one in the family. She doesn't really look black. Like, I mean, her mom was black, but her dad was Spanish though. So she looks mixed, I guess you could say. I don't know. But so it was like, you know, my mom was the light one, me, my sister, and my dad are the dark ones. And so, but even still, like my mom, she didn't pass on those type of anti-Black ideals to me, maybe because she herself was raised by her very Black grandmother. So to her, it wasn't anything negative, you know. She never made us feel weird because of our skin color. I never really saw her talking negatively about other Dominicans or other people that were, you know, dark. So, and another thing is I never hear anybody in my family talking about Haitians, you know, and that's another thing too, that I've really had to learn myself within the past couple of years. Okay. Like, where does this tension or whatever, where does it come from? And so I've had to learn some of the history, because my parents, they didn't talk about it. They didn't really teach me the history. So that's where I was like, okay, I got to go look for this myself. But again, the point is I didn't hear this growing up. So especially when, you know, I started my channel, came onto YouTube, and then that's when I saw all these comments. And, you know, I did see some of the anti-Black type of comments from people. And let me tell you, I had a lot of Dominicans trolling me when I first came on YouTube. Okay, they're all Black now. But I was kind of like, wow, this is how some of y'all feel though? Like, this how y'all feel? So yeah, it was definitely an eye-opening thing for me to an extent. But at the same time, you know, my purpose was more like to show, like, you guys, not all of us grew up with this anti-Black mentality. A lot of us actually did not. So let me show this to you guys, okay? Let me show y'all that not all of us are on that anti-Black stuff or even like the anti-Haitian stuff. So that was kind of more my
It's crazy because when I first started like making videos about anti-Haitianism on my TikTok, I got so much backlash. Like, it was great. I got so much backlash. I was like, okay. Like, I made a few videos like talking about things. Like, and then I also even made one video. Like, I was doing one of the compa dance trends that they had on TikTok. So I'm dancing compa, and like people are commenting, oh, if they play that music in my country, I'd burn the radio down. Like, you know, I got a DM. A guy said, you would be trying to entice your Haitian primos. They'll do anybody. I was like,
Oh my gosh. Wow.
It's just, and I'm just like, people really, really think like this. And it's funny because actually, because of all of these things, I've actually connected with a lot of Haitian creators on TikTok, a lot of Dominican and Haitian creators, because that community is huge. So you know, people think, you know, oh my gosh, you guys don't get along. And, you know, I was like, there are so many people who are both though. That's the funny part. So I'm like, you know, that idea doesn't always happen, you know.
People that are half Dominican, half Haitian, I feel like they're like rarely talked about. They're like this little secret nobody wants to like point out. It's so weird.
Yeah.
But continue.
Yeah, but it's just, I just thought it was funny because, you know, because of that whole thing, you know, I actually was able to connect with a lot of, you know, Dominicans who didn't have those ideas, who didn't have that mindset. And I was able to connect with a lot of Haitian creators, a lot of Haitian and Dominican creators, which has been really cool. And I've actually ended up, you know, getting a lot of Haitian content on my TikTok, which sometimes is really great. And then sometimes it's like, wow, Creole, I have no idea what's going on. But yeah, so it's definitely, you know, connected me a lot to the Haitian community, which I love because I honestly, and it's not even like for the clout or, you know, anything, you know, it's like I said, like I have an aunt who's half Haitian. I've always thought that Haitian culture was really dope. I love the language. I'm actually, right now I'm trying to learn French because I was like, I was telling mommy, yo voy a aprender a hablar creole porque tengo toda esta gente haitiana, yo quiero hablar con ellos. And so I'm like, I'm gonna learn Creole. And I was like, no, but that's kind of hard. I was like, let me learn French first and then we'll see if I can try to learn some Creole. But no, it's definitely been really cool being able to connect with a community of just, you know, both sides, like Dominicans and Haitians who are super, you know, dope and super, you know, loving. So,
yeah, no, that's what's up. Yeah, when it comes to Haitian culture, again, I grew up very, very ignorant to Haitian culture, to Haitian people. I didn't know any Haitians in my area growing up. So that's another thing that, again, thanks to being on YouTube, I've kind of learned a little bit more about Haitian culture, a little bit. And I've noticed I've also had more Haitian subscribers lately too. So, you know, kind of, you know, get my hand in there a little bit with the Haitian community. But yeah, you know, I've had my share of people saying that I was really Haitian, pretend to be Dominican because of the things that I would say. And I'm like, y'all are retarded as fuck, but okay. You know, like if I was Haitian, I would just say it. Like, anyways, that's a whole nother story for another day. But yeah, so that's what's up. That's really cool that you're able to do that. So when it comes to this whole anti-Blackness thing, do you feel like the Puerto Rican community experiences something similar?
So yeah, it's funny because I actually said, you know, when I did the anti-Blackness in the Dominican community live, I did say I wanted to do one about anti-Blackness in the Puerto Rican community because, and this isn't something that we talked about on the live or anything, but because of the fact that Dominicans of Haitians, they actually do also work a lot with Puerto Rico. They do a lot of programs in Puerto Rico as well. And especially with like the Afro-Puerto Rican community, they do a lot of programs. So we were talking about that as well, just like that side of my family, just in other private conversations. And, you know, I was telling them, I think I actually do want to do something talking about anti-Blackness just because in the Puerto Rican community, they do say that majority of Puerto Ricans are white. Now, that idea, I've been kind of bouncing around back and forth with that because the problem with that idea is that, like I said, when I went to the island, I saw white people. That's what I saw. But a lot of people have been, you know, fighting me on it saying, you know, oh no, but that's not true. And I'm like, I'm not saying that that's absolutely true. Like I'm saying, this is what I saw when I went over there. And this is what I hear is that majority of Puerto Ricans are white and that being Black is the minority in Puerto Rico. So, you know, the difficult part about that though is always that there's this thing with like self-identification, you know, that it's like, if, you know, when they're taking count, Puerto Ricans are saying that they're white and they could be the Blackest person in town and they could be saying that they're white, you know, nobody's going to stop them from writing that on a paper, you know. It's almost, it's like, it's even like when we do the census here, like I could be writing down, I could be literally straight from Africa, like a super Black person, I could write, I'm white, and no one's going to question me on that. You know what I mean? Because if that's what you're writing down, then that's what you're writing down. So that's definitely the issue when it comes to trying to figure out, like, you know, is it true that we're majority white? Is it true that we're majority black? You know, definitely self-identification plays a big role in that. But I've seen anti-blackness among the Puerto Rican community, to be honest, even with like people that I know, friends, family, like I've seen it definitely, just because, and definitely like just seeing definitely the experience of being Afro-Latina, Afro-Caribeña in a white Puerto Rican family has been interesting. Just seeing like that, basically like being Latino is not a race, right? And it's like people have, you know, identified it as if it's a race, and I understand why that happens. But you know, when things happen like Black Lives Matter and all these protests and all these things, we really start to see people's true colors when we have these conversations. And people say things and you're like, what? So definitely I've seen that, like online, in person, conversations that I've seen, videos I've seen that Puerto Ricans have made online, even other white Latinos have made online. Like it just goes to show that Latino's not a race. It's not your race. And some people who are white Latinos, they show their privilege and they show basically like a white supremacist attitude. And it's like, you have Black roots. Like, I don't know if you thought that there was no Black in your blood. There is. And you probably have friends who are Black. You probably have family who are Black. And it's like the fact that you have these ideas and like people don't expect it from you because you're a minority, you know? So I just feel like every community has anti-Blackness. And at this point, it's like, the problem is that every Latino community, every single country, I feel like I've seen it especially a lot with Dominicans, but I think that might just be because the Dominican Republic is majority mixed race and Black people, which is probably why we see it more in our community. But every single Latino community, and I've seen it especially through the internet, that when we talk about anti-Blackness, people are offended. And it doesn't really make sense, because I always kind of say, like, if the shoe fits, wear it. If it doesn't, then don't. If we're talking about anti-Blackness and you're not anti-Black, then why are you offended? Why are you going off in everyone's comment section if you're not anti-Black? Like, if you're offended by it, it kind of makes me look at you sideways and go, why are you offended? You know? So I feel like that's the root of it with the Latino community in general. When it comes to anti-Blackness, the issue is that anytime we talk about it, everyone's offended by it. You know, it's like a lot of people don't even want to be open to the conversation.
Yeah.
And that's the root of the problem.
Yes. No, for sure. I feel like I kind of see that every time I do a video or even some of these interviews, when the topic of Blackness or anti-Blackness is raised, people are just not trying to hear it. They're not trying to hear it. I mean, I get it, I guess. And I mean, I'm not gonna lie. When I do see people online, especially targeting Dominicans so much, it does kind of get on my nerves. It does, because I know that I'm not anti-Black, and I know that my family's not anti-Black. So I think that's why it actually bugs me, because it's like y'all are generalizing all of us to be this way when we're simply not. But yeah, it is a difficult thing to try to address when, like I said, not everyone is open to it. They don't want to address it, or they just.
But I feel like definitely the anti-Blackness conversation with Dominicans has kind of been fueled by anti-Haitianism, which is weird, because I do think that, you know, anti-Haitianism isn't always racist. It isn't always colorist. You know, sometimes people are just, you know, just because of history and because of things that they disagree on. So, but I feel like that is actually probably, I feel like most of the time that's the root. It's the fact of the relationship with Haiti, you know, the beef or the supposed beef or whatever it is supposed to be, because, you know, some people say the beef doesn't exist, but, you know.
No, it's definitely there.
Right. No, some people say the beef doesn't exist. Like, stop talking about the beef. It's not there. It doesn't exist. But, you know, but the relationship that there has, that it seems like there has been, and it seems like there still, you know, is to an extent, with Dominican Republic and Haiti has fueled it. And also the fact that, like I said before, the fact that we're majority mixed and we're majority Black is kind of what fuels people talking specifically about Dominicans. But definitely I agree with you when it comes to that. It's kind of like, okay, why are you always talking about Dominicans? Okay, let's talk about another country now, next, because every single one of y'all are doing it. There are countries there are so many countries where Black people have been killed and Black people have been mistreated. And it's like, no one's talking about that. It's like, if I didn't follow certain activists from certain other Latin American countries, I wouldn't even hear about these things. Why? Because every time we talk about anti-Blackness, we want to talk about DR especially, or we want to talk about Cuba, or we want to talk about Puerto Rico, we want to talk about the Caribbean islands, as if everyone else doesn't have it.
Exactly.
Even the rest of the Caribbean has anti-Blackness. I don't know if anybody else, like, there's all these videos going on online of like certain people saying from different parts of the Caribbean saying, "Oh, I'm not Black, I'm just Caribbean, I'm not Black." So I feel like the thing is that Black has been made out to be a bad thing for the human race. It's been made to be a bad thing for the world. Racism is a worldwide problem. It's not a problem in DR. It's not a problem in the Caribbean. It's not a problem in Latin America. It is a problem in the entire world.
Yeah.
The fact that Black has been made to seem as if it is something terrible.
Right. And
that is showing its ugly head, not just in the Caribbean or Latin America. That's showing its head everywhere. You know? Anti-Blackness is international. It doesn't only happen in DR. So
right. But it's like everybody wants to point fingers, it's like, stop. All y'all do the same shit. Just because one country may be more aware of their Blackness or whatever doesn't mean that they don't experience or have anti-Black, sentiments or ideologies. Like, it's like I've said before on my channel, any country that, especially that was colonized, like, there's going to be remnants of that. There's no way of getting around that. So why don't we just admit that we all have these problems and try to move forward and try to move past those ideologies and just accept ourselves for who we are, Oh, so I saw that you recently made a post. It was talking about violence against women. And I feel like this is something that we don't talk about too much. It's like a known issue, but people are just kind of silent on it for whatever reason. So your post was talking, I think, specifically about Puerto Rico, but I know that femicide, that's how you say it, right? Femicide?
Yeah,
has been a big issue in DR as well. I've seen a lot of posts talking about that. I recently seen some posts about some young girl, something happened to her in DR anyway, but it's a known issue. So what are your thoughts on that and why you made that post?
So I actually just shared that just because I have been seeing a lot of videos online just talking about specifically about issues in Puerto Rico, just because from what I mean, it's been very suppressed, like, it's like I only see it from certain creators, certain pages, it's not anything that I see being blown up like in a big way. And so I feel like anytime it comes to things like this, I feel like they're very like, it's very suppressed, it's very like underground. It's like no one's talking about it. So I'm not going to say that I'm an expert on the subject, but I definitely saw a lot of threads, a lot of videos about it. And so the thing is that most of what I do, most of my content is, like music and entertainment and things like that, because that's mostly what I do. But I always just try to make my page somewhere where, like, yeah, I'm going to share fun stuff. I'm going to share music and things like that. But when I see something that's important, especially something that's important that is based in our community and that's important to us, and especially, or something that's important to women in general, like anything that I think is important for you guys to see, I'm going to put it on my page. Whether it's, racial issues, violence against women, like I said, these are not things that I'm not an expert on those subjects. Like I said, I do entertainment. I'm a producer. I'm a content creator. That's what I do. I'm in no way, shape, or form an expert on history. I'm not an expert in any of these things. I'm not an expert in. But at the end of the day, I feel like in this day and age, like, everybody has to, in a way, be an activist. Everybody has to be a voice. Everybody has to open their mouth when they think something's important, or even if it's something as simple as sharing a post, So when I see things like that, like I said, I don't know extensively on the subject, because like I said, I haven't really seen that much about it. But I saw that it was something that that was affecting, women and Puerto Rican women in general. On that post specifically, because it's talking about femicide in Puerto Rico, and I had seen a lot of people posting about how women in Puerto Rico have been going missing recently, and that people are not talking about it. It's kind of like we don't care, we don't know, nobody knows anything. Like, women have been going missing, and this is like a thing that's happening constantly, So like I said, I don't live in Puerto Rico, so definitely it's not something that I directly would know a lot about. But like I said, I like to share things that I think are important, you know, and especially if it's things that are not really being covered in the media, not really being covered in a big way, you know, at least if, you know, somebody sees my post, at least that makes them aware of it. They're like, oh shoot, this is happening. And then a lot of people like that post, you know, I posted it and a lot of people reposted it. So now their followers are going to see it too. And, you know, so I just think that that's important, definitely. Just, you know, just using your platform to elevate things that are important. So.
Yeah, most definitely. Yeah, and I mean that's great. You're using your platform and your TikToks too, because it's not all like funny stuff. I mean, you do sometimes post some more like serious stuff to talk about, you know, these racial issues, the issue with the violence against women. Because again, we don't always talk about that. And I didn't know that was happening in Puerto Rico. I do know though that I've heard about, you know, this type of stuff happening in DR. And you know, I've recently seen people posting about like the adolescent pregnancy rate or girls getting married very young in DR, which it's like a cultural norm almost, but it's like when you really look at it, it's like, yo, this ain't right. Like these young, super young girls don't need to be getting married off to these older men. But
and these violent things, they happen everywhere. Like, you know, everybody knows, you know, like here in the US that these things happen, people go missing, you know, human trafficking is a problem in this country too. But then again, I feel like the difference between this country and these smaller Caribbean countries is like, you know, it's a massive difference. It's like the US compared to these smaller Caribbean countries, like over there, the vibe is so much different over there. So over there, it's easier for these things to kind of just go unnoticed, you know, rather than here in the US where, you know, in a way it will get more, it will get, you know, not that I'm saying it gets the attention it needs, but it definitely would get more attention than it would in these countries. So yeah.
Right. Yeah. But I think it just requires a shift in, I guess, mentality and not seeing these things as just kind of like, well, kind of like just almost a normal thing. Because here, I mean, we know that it happens, but I think most people have that mindset like, yo, this ain't normal. But I think sometimes in other countries, people just kind of let it slide a little bit. So I think there's a little shift in mentality that needs to happen there as well. So that I wanted to get your quick opinion on that. So Amelia, that was all of my questions I had for you. So thank you again for doing this interview.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, you made a lot of good points. Yes. I think it was really cool to hear your perspective, you know, again, being half Dominican and half Puerto Rican, and just your thoughts on some of these issues that exist within our community. So to everyone listening, again, definitely go check out Amelia's Instagram, the Tempo Network's Instagram, Amelia's channel, Amelia's TikTok. If you're on TikTok, I'll leave the names to all that down below so you guys can get connected. And yeah, I'll check everyone else next time. All right. Thank you again, Amelia.
All right. Thank you.
Bye.